Welcome to Working for Women, the Independent Women's Forum podcast, where we are changing the conversation about women and public policy for the better.
Hello, my name is Patrice Nwoka, and I'm a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum. Now, last week, Senators Mike Lee of Utah and Joni Ernst of Iowa introduced the CRADLE Act, a plan that allows new moms and dads to receive paid time off for a new child through Social Security. This is an idea that was modeled after the innovative Social Security Earned Leave, or SSEL, plan by our organization, the Independent Women's Forum. This is the second bill, actually, to be introduced that was inspired by SSEL. So here to talk with us more about SSEL is IWF's president, Carrie Lucas, and she's going to talk about the benefits of this plan as well as push back on some of the criticisms that we've heard. So, Carrie, I've got a newborn. You have 5 kids. So we've definitely talked a lot about paid leave and how we can make it available to individuals and also some of the bad policies out there. So I'm looking forward to digging into this with you today.
Yes. Thank you so much, Patrice. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. So last week, I know it was very exciting for IWF. We saw the introduction of the CRADLE Act, and you know, it's very fun to see all of this IWF moms with their babies, the baby bellies, the newborns, preschoolers, everybody, you know, really putting a face on this issue of paid leave, but also a conservative solution to it. So tell us about SSEL and why it's such an innovative approach to parental leave.
Yeah, you know, I think that for so long, I appreciate you kind of the setup of this because I think everybody knows how important the idea of being able to take time off from work is. And the good news is that for a long time now, we've seen the private sector growing and providing this benefit to more and more workers. Since tax cuts, we've seen a number of big companies start offering not just their kind of executive or salaried employees, but even hourly workers paid time off from work. And that is really something we want to make sure continues. And one of the challenges is with this issue is so many of the solutions that have been pushed in the past would stop that progress and would really take us in the wrong direction. If government comes in and says, hey, we're going to start collecting taxes and provide people with a set benefit, that's going to discourage the private sector from doing this, which is why the Social Security Earned Leave is a really different approach. Basically, this is allowing people to take a benefit that they've already earned. You're already paying into the Social Security system. You're already earning retirement benefits in the future. You're already eligible for Social Security disability benefits. But so this says that, hey, you're going to, instead of waiting and starting to take benefits at age 67, you can take a bit of that now, basically front load those benefits in return for a changed eligibility at the end. So this is changing the timing. It's not displacing private action. There's no reason why a company should drop employment. And it's allowing expanding benefits and expanding access to paid leave without expanding government. And that's really the needle we were trying to thread at IWF.
Okay, well, this all sounds great, and I certainly am on board. But let's jump to the criticisms. Now, on the left, they say it's unfair to ask people to trade time off during retirement for parental leave. I've even heard that this is going to reduce retirement benefits. Are either of these criticisms true?
Yeah, you know, I feel like it's really strange to me when people try to deny or say that it's unfair to have trade-offs in a program like Social Security or in life in general, because we all know that that's a big part of life. Everything involves trade-offs. And especially with the Social Security, we already have kind of baked into the concept of Social Security trade-offs about timing of benefits. Right now, as somebody who is 62, I can decide I'm going to start taking retirement benefits early, but in exchange for having a reduced payment. Or you can say I'm going to put off taking benefits and work a little longer to increase the amount of benefits I have over time. These are both options. There's trade-offs to it. You work a little longer, you work a little less, and you would change how much your benefit is. These are options that we give free individuals, and we trust people to make decisions and to decide what's best for them. You know, similarly, obviously with Social Security, you make a trade-off with Social Security based on how much time you work and how much time you take out of the labor force. somebody who chooses to drop out of the workforce entirely and stop paying Social Security taxes, that man or woman is potentially reducing the amount of retirement benefits that he or she is going to be due later on in life. This is part of the trade-offs we all make when we decide how much to work or not. So it's really silly to say that somehow it's crazy to give people an option. And I think that's really, this is not something we are not forcing somebody to give up something. We're giving them an option. So really, it's very paternalistic to say, we don't want people to have the option of making that trade-off about their retirement benefits when that's clearly, they'll only do it if they think it's in their best interest and they know better than anybody else whether it makes sense.
Okay, so that's the left, and I'm glad you addressed that. But we've surprisingly gotten a lot of pushback from some folks on the right. I think I laid out I highlighted about three. One, the private sector is already doing this, and this is not the sphere of government. Number two, this is going to discourage needed changes to Social Security. And number three, almost that slippery slope argument where it would turn Social Security into a piggy bank for other needs. So how do you respond to those big criticisms from the right?
Sure. And I think I do have good response. I'm glad you're bringing these up because it's important to address them. And first, on the idea of the scope of government, I very much sympathize with the idea that the federal government has gotten too much in the business of doing too much. The federal government's supposed to have a very limited role in our lives. The last thing in the world we want to do is to expand it even more. But that said, we need to recognize where we are in reality now, and also recognize what happens. What are the consequences of not providing people access to something like this Social Security Earned Leave program or this idea? Right now, if somebody doesn't have access to paid leave, and they need paid leave, and they don't have it through their workplace, about half of those with low incomes end up on some other form of public assistance. They're going on other state-based financial support programs, basically welfare. They start collecting food stamps. Sometimes they find ways to take unemployment by leaving their job or purposely getting fired from their job or being let go. There's other ways for them to start receiving public support because they lack paid leave. So that's one way I think it's important to recognize that actually by giving people this option to access money that they've already earned or that is baked into their Social Security benefits could actually reduce support on government. So in some ways, it's a very conservative proposal. You're taking personal responsibility instead of trying to find a way to receive government financial support in other ways. You're making a trade-off. You're saying I need this support now, and then I'll trade it off for something else. So I think that's actually why this, in my mind, doesn't expand government. It's actually just modernizing our safety net and making it more responsive and more efficient in helping people by providing support when they need it most. And then on this idea of discouraging private companies from providing benefits, actually this is one where I know this firsthand. As you know, I run the Independent Women's Forum, and I'm the person who's really in charge of making sure that we make our budget and to consider how we compensate our employees. And so I think about this. As you mentioned, Patrice, we have a lot of people that have babies and that need time off from work. And so I think about how we would react as a small employer. How would I change things if something like the Social Security Earned Leave Plan were to put in place? Well, I wouldn't. Because I know this is something that's important to the women who work at IWF. I wouldn't consider trying to drop our benefits to save a few bucks and then say, Patrice, sorry, you're going to have to access your Social Security benefits now and go through and access this in exchange for retirement. Because I would prefer to. I feel like I attract better people by providing the paid leave benefits that we offer today. Since it doesn't change my calculations as an employer, you're not raising my employment costs, you don't have a new payroll tax, there's really very little incentive for me to change that kind of, to change what I'm doing now, or even to prevent me from trying to expand benefits as a form of compensating my employees in the future. That's a really important contrast because if the Family Act, if a new paid leave entitlement came into effect that made everyone at IWF have to pay an additional payroll tax, I absolutely would have to consider eliminating the paid leave benefits that we currently offer our employees and put everybody on the government program, since they'd be paying into it and they would basically have access to what would seem at that point like free money. So that would absolutely displace what we would be doing. So really, I feel like as a small employer, I can speak to this not just as a policy analyst, but from firsthand experience. And then finally, on the slippery slope argument, I think that there is something, I understand concerns about this, but there's a little bit of kind of irrationality. I think that this is clearly the Social Security program. It's supposed to be about providing worker protection. We already have this disability aspect tucked into it or as a part of the Social Security program. But this is a very discreet and kind of sensible way to help people be secure and to provide security so that they can stay in the workplace. And I think that's actually a very kind of limited but understandable way to expand Social Security. The other things people kind of float as, why wouldn't they, very we do this, why wouldn't we end up having people finance their student loans through Social Security? I think that seems there's a very different idea, because it's unrelated to it's unrelated to Social Security itself or to workforce attachment, and it's such a large amount of money that would obviously tremendously change people's retirement benefits. So I do think that we always have to be careful of slippery slopes and make sure that we only change government in ways that are rational, but I don't think that that's a terribly serious concern.
Well, Carrie, thank you for hitting all of those criticisms. Last question, do you think that the CRADLE Act will pass?
That's an important question, but it's funny. I'm not a very good political prognosticator, but I think that this is the kind of thing where, looking at the situation that we have when it comes to relationships in Congress, I find it very hard to imagine that anything is going to move forward. I think that the CRADLE Act has a lot of appeal. I would be surprised if it doesn't attract more and more sponsors, because I think it has so much to offer. But there's a lot of folks on the left right now who are really loath to give up this issue and want to prevent progress. So I'm not holding my breath, but I think even if it's not this year, this is going to be something we're going to be hearing a lot more about. And I'm hopeful that Americans will start saying that this is something that should be a consensus, and that in the not too distant future, this can really this could move forward.
Well, when you think about public opinion, it's nearly universal that Americans want new moms to have maternity leave and pretty high in the 70% support dads also having paternity leave. So, I think it's great that we have a really good idea that's, been turned into legislation and in two pieces of legislation, and we'll see what happens with it. But, I just want to underscore for our listeners one more time a point you made, Carrie, which is that if we ignore this problem, you're going to have impacts of working moms dropping out of the labor force. And we don't want to see the labor force impacted, young women not being, leaving the workforce because they can't afford to have time off. And then on top of that, taxpayers are on the hook for funding that time off through public assistance. So, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Carrie, thank you so much for walking us through Social Security earned leave. If you want to know more about this issue, go to iwf.org/paid-leave. We've got tons of information on SSEL and some great things that you can share with your families and your friends and get the discussion going on this topic. Now, don't forget, please share this podcast with your friends and like and rate this on iTunes so that other people can find this podcast. And to our listeners, thanks for listening, and tune in again.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, or stop by iwf.org for similar content.